This is a presentation on Lab Assignment 1, Researching Public Companies. The objective of this assignment is to locate reliable financial information about a company. The nature of the company is it is an incorporated business that is reflected in its name as Company or Co., Limited or Ltd., Incorporated or Inc. This is essential since the business is a separate legal entity and must have a unique name. In this assignment, we'll be looking for reliable financial information, which we can get from the company directly or from the SEDAR site, where companies must post with the Securities and Exchange Commission the required financial information. Not as reliable would be information posted on investment and news websites. It may be reliable, it may not, but you would use it at your own risk. In your assignment, you'll be asked to identify the 3 major stock exchanges in Canada. Now let's briefly take a look at the assignment. If you go into eLearn, under Content, one of the modules will be titled Lab Assignment 1, Lab 1 Assignment. It has 2 files. The first one is the cover page for the assignment. The second file is the 4-page lab assignment. Print out all 5 pages. Your assignment will be the hard copy that you turn in of these 5 pages, plus some other information we'll identify later. So again, start by printing out these 5 pages from your eLearn Lab 1 assignment. Now, you'll be asked about the stock exchanges, and you'll be asked to research a public company on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Here is the cover page and assessment rubric. This will be the first page, your first hard copy. On that page, you'll put your name and student number at the top. And then after you've completed your assignment, you'll fill in the company names of the 3 companies that you've worked on in these spaces that are designated. The first page of the 4 is where you'll be doing the work on the lab. This first section indicates the background information that you will gather in order to prepare to complete this assignment. Once you've done that, you will then move on and identify a company on the Toronto Stock Exchange, where you'll be looking for the company name, its stock symbol, usually a series of letters, its stock price today, today's date and time, and then you'll be looking for its financial statement date, current and previous year, its net income or net loss, current and previous year, and its basic earnings per share, current and previous year. Let's take a look now at the Toronto Stock Exchange. This is the website for the Toronto Stock Exchange. If we are trying to find a company, we would want to go to the Listed Company directory to select the company. If we click on the Listed Company directory, that will pull up the letters, and we can select by selecting the beginning letter, or we can type in a company name. So for example, if I wanted a company that started with the letter A, I would click on the A and it would bring them up in alphabetical order. Looking at the list, A&W, Revenue, Royalties, Income Fund, I can see that this is an income fund, not a company, so this is not something I would want to select. The next one, Astra Technologies Limited, so it is a company. Here's its stock symbol, AAH, and it is traded on the Toronto Exchange. So that would be a suitable company to select for this example. If I click on it, it will pull up information about the company. And in this section, I can go to different parts of the site to get information about the company, its financials, its price history, and so forth. So one way I can select a company then is by just selecting from the letters that are presented. Another way I can select a company is by just typing in the name. Select one company that you're interested, perhaps in working for. Now you'll notice that the name Research in Motion that I typed in came up here. That is a hotkey. There's its stock symbol, RIM, and it's traded on the Toronto Exchange. So if I click on the name, it will bring up the information about that company, showing me the current trading price. Now if I want other information, I have to use these keys that appear here. For example, if I want price history, there's current day price history. I want to see some charts. It will show me over various time frames the changes in the stock price. If I want financial information, I'll click on the Financials key. And when I do that, it will bring up financial information about the company I'm working on, Research in Motion. Okay, so here's the financials for Research in Motion. We have assets, liabilities. Here is their date, 2011 to 2010. It's annual information and it's balance sheet information. So I say asset information, liability information, and some equity information. Now, as part of this assignment, you're asked to identify the company's current net income and previous year's net income. To do that, we will have to go to the income statement. So again, looking at the income statement information now under Financials. Again, I have the dates. What I'm looking for is their net income. On this slide, it would be the total net income. So $33.24 current year, $25.97 previous year. I'm also looking for the earnings per share, basic. Basic earnings per share, $6.20 this year, $4.60 last year. Now, when I pick up the information from the income statement, I have to pay attention to any index that's given. You'll notice up here it says in millions of dollars. So if I was recording the net income, I'd have to make sure that I put in the proper number of zeros following that to properly reflect the net income or net loss. So that's how we would get information off the Toronto Stock Exchange. We're being asked here to research a company on the Toronto Stock Exchange, to take note of the highly summarized format of the financial information, to document the stock price, and the other details that we just looked at. For company number 2, if your last name begins with A, let's say your last name is Apple, then you would have to pick a company that's first letter begins with E. Or if your last name is Brown, you would have to pick a company that starts with the letter S for your company number 2. Now, moving on to company number 2. Company number 2, we are going to select not from the Toronto Stock Exchange, but from SEDAR. So we'll have to go to the SEDAR website. We'll select English. Now, when you see these choices, we're going to go to company profiles. We want to see the companies that are listed in SEDAR. There are public companies. There are investment fund groups. We are only interested in the public companies. So if we're selecting from SEDAR, we're going to use the A to Z that's reflected here. So for example, if I wanted to select a company that began with A, I click on A, it brings up the list. I'm looking for a company. And it tells me some background about the company. It tells me the industry classification, what type of business it's in, industrial products, technology. It tells me the stock exchange it's traded on, the TSX. It gives me the stock symbol. And I would then click View the company's public documents if I'm looking for their financial information. Now, this file reflects all the different postings made by Astra. Monthly report, interim filings, news releases, interim financial statements, annual report in English. But here's what I'm looking for: the audited annual financial statements in English. These were filed with the Securities Commission March 7, 2011. When I click on that, I'll be asked to enter a security code. Accept the terms of use in order to access the financial statements. When I access those, I see the letter of management responsibility for 2010 and 9, the auditor's report signed by the auditors KPMG, the audit report February 25th, 2011, and then I see the financial statements. The financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2010 and 9. The title of this financial statement is the Consolidated Balance Sheets. So I'm going to be looking at these financial statements, identifying their titles, Consolidated Statement of Earnings in this case, Consolidated Statements of Shareholders' Equity and Comprehensive Income, Consolidated Statements of Cash Flows, and the financial statements are immediately followed by the notes to the financial statements. The title of the first note, Significant Accounting Policies. Continuing, 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 continuing again. Title of the second note, Cash and Cash Equivalents. Title of the third note, Investments. This is the type of detail you'll be documenting as you work on company number 2. Okay, let's close that out and go back to our instructions. When you research Company 2 on SADAR, you're going to note the industry classification as it appeared on that first page. The posting of filed documents from the company, you'll notice there are a lot of different companies, documents that are there. And then finally, the difference between the annual report and the annual financial statements. When you select the annual report, it contains a lot of information, including the financial statements, so it will be a much larger file. The financial statements, the audited annual financial statements, are really what we want to use. And so that's what we'll be looking at when we answer the questions required in the lab. So from that file, you will document the company name, which must be its full legal name and unique for each company. You will then want to document the titles of each of the financial statements. We note that not all companies use the same names for the financial statements. One may call it an income statement, another a profit and loss statement or statement of operations. So what we're trying to identify is what did that company call its financial statements. So that will complete the documentation then for company number 2. Now, moving on to company number 3, it will also be selected from SADAR. The company that you select must correspond with the criteria that are reflected in the lab assignment. So I'm going to pull that up. For company number 3, if your last name is Apple, you would have to pick a company name that begins with H or with J. If your last name is Brown, for company number 3, you would have to pick a company that's first letter begins with N or with P. So this is the basis then for selecting the company. And as you saw on the SADAR website, there is the alphabetical listing, so you can do that. Now, for company number 3, you must apply the following selection criteria. The business you select must be a company. So that is an incorporated business. It must be active. That is, it is still in business and is traded in Canada. And you probably should check that it is active before you continue and answer all the questions about that particular company. Once you have got a suitable company, you would then go on to document the financial statement information and list where those items were found on the financial statements. Let's go back to the assignment page. So for your company selection, first it must be a company. So it excludes all these other forms of business organization. Second, it must be active and still exist, still traded. Third, it must be a public company in Canada, so it must be traded on a Canadian exchange. Fourth, the financial statements must be recent. By recent, we mean that no older than 2 years from today's date. Fifth, and this is very important, the business activity cannot include specialized industries. Those specialized industries are financial, things like banks, financial institutions, trusts, insurance companies, REITs, mutual funds, investment companies, capital companies, venture capital companies or holding companies, exploration or resource companies, anything in the resource sector, oil, gas, mining, timber, gold, etc. All of those are specialized industries with special purpose financial statements, so we want to avoid those. And finally, we want to use only the audited annual financial statements. When we looked at SADR, we saw that there were postings for the interim financial statements as well. Those are not acceptable. We must use only the audited annual financial statements. Now, once we have a company that meets those criteria, we would then carry on with the assignment. So check that your company is active and meets all 6 of those criteria before continuing to answer the following requirement on page 3 and 4 of the assignment. Now the documentation you are requested will come directly from the financial statements, and you'll also indicate where you found that information. So again, let's go to the assignment page to look at that. So you're listing the title of the first note to the financial statements, you're listing the titles of the current assets, the titles of the equity accounts, and you're also going to indicate specific items. On the financial statement date, what is reported on the balance sheet? Is there cash, cash and cash equivalents? We'd expect to see these under the asset side. Or if the company has no cash, it may instead under liabilities show something called bank indebtedness or none, neither of these. And so we're trying to get an idea of what their cash position is, either cash assets or cash debt being bank indebtedness. Right, so that's the first thing you're looking at on your balance sheet. After you do that, you're then going to move on and look for the cash balance. What is the cash balance? And after you've found the cash balance, you indicate where did you find that, on which financial statement. So earlier in the assignment, you listed your financial statements. If your, for example, balance sheet was FS1, then you'll just write FS1 in here, and that'll tell me that you found that on the financial statement that you labeled as your financial statement 1. Let's just go back and look at that for a moment. So if, for example, your FS1 was balance sheet, then for your cash balance, you would fill in FS1. Okay, next you're asked for the cash from operations or from operating activities. And again, you'll indicate the financial statement source where you found that. Next, total equity, where you found that. Current assets, where you found that. Current liabilities, where you found that. Next, you will calculate your current ratio, and you must show this calculation, current assets divided by current liabilities. The next section deals with the number of common shares. The number of common shares authorized is either a number or the word unlimited. So indicate the number or the word unlimited and the financial statement source where you found that information. Next, indicate the number of shares issued and outstanding. Again, where you found that information. And then finally, the weighted average number of shares outstanding and where you found that information. In some cases, the information itself may not appear on the face of the financial statement. It may be in a note to the financial statements. In that situation, indicate the note number where you found the information. And then finally, to finish off the lab, you'll put in today's date and the current market price that your company's share is trading for. After filling this out, you will then print out the financial statements for Company 3 only. The financial statements are those statements that you have listed on your assignment. So all of these statements that you've identified and listed as being part of the company's financial statements, you will print out and attach at the back of your assignment in the order that you have listed them here on your assignment. So again, you will fill in the financial information, listing the items requested and where you found them. Print out the financial statements for Company 3. And then finally, assemble your assignment. Turn in the 4-page lab assignment with your cover page on top and the printout of the financial statements in the same order that you listed them for Company 3 only. That assignment will be due at the beginning of class on the due date. That concludes the presentation on Lab 1.